Hello, this is Henry Schaefer, and welcome to Old and New Testament Survey. It is a summary of the books of the Old and the New Testament. Now, what you're going to get here, you're going to get some unique insight concerning each book of the Bible, key verses that will just jump out at you and bring new revelation to you, relevant truth for today, some special notes that I have dictated and put in my Bible over the years that I have studied. Also, there's going to be it will be a brief but comprehensive summary of each book. Now, you can also look for some wow moments of revelation of truth that we're going to give you. Now, if you're ready to start out on Old and New Testament survey, come on and join us, man. We're going to have a great time studying the Bible together. All right, so grab your Bibles and flip on over there to 2 Kings. 2 Kings. The author uses historical or sources that are in our Bible here. He was one of the exiles who lived in Babylon, perhaps an unknown one. It could be Ezra. Some people say it might be Ezekiel or Jeremiah that wrote the book of Kings. Nevertheless, regardless of, it's in our canon of Scripture when we look at it. Let's look at the theme and the purpose of the book of Kings, 2 Kings. 2 Kings continues the history of Elijah as his successor, Elisha, but it also continues what might be termed as the tale of two kingdoms. As such, it continues to trace the history of the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah until they finally conquered and taken into captivity. Now, here's what I want to tell you first of all. Right now, if you're sitting in here right now, and there's going to be a couple of dates that if you study the Bible that you should always know. I'm going to give you those dates here in just a moment. Those who are a serious Bible study of a student of the Bible know these dates in the Old Testament. And the date is, when did Israel cease to be Israel? That date, the year. And then the next one will be, what's the date when Judah ceased to be a nation? See what I'm talking about? Those two dates, if you're going to read anything or you're going to talk about it, those are normally the two dates that people are going to look for in that. Say somebody says, well, Pastor, what are the two dates? I'm going to tell you in just a few moments, but I want to let you know that's one of the reasons why. Listen here, 1 Kings doesn't talk about this. 2 Kings does. Remember, here's what I said. 2 Kings talks about the demise of the northern kingdom and the demise of the southern kingdom. It speaks of in this book right here. That's why it's so important for us to discuss it. So let's look at it right here. So the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah until they are finally conquered and taken into captivity. Here's what I'm going to tell you at the beginning. Israel fell to Assyria in 722 BC. That's a term. That's a year that you need to know. 722 BC. The northern kingdom did not exist after that, and Judah fell. Now watch this here. That's 722 BC. Judah fell to the Babylonians in 586 BC, and both kingdom and prophets continued to warn the people of God that would punish them unless they repented. So the next one, the last one, was when Judah fell. When did it fall? 586 BC. Those two dates, if you're a real Bible student, you will always know those two dates. You see what I mean? That's what really happened there. It happens here. So 2 Kings teaches us that willful sin in a nation has a woeful end. In 1 and 2 Samuel, here's what happens. The nation is born. 1 Kings, what happens? What happens to Israel in 1 Kings? In 1 and 2 Samuel, the nation is born. In 1 Kings, what happens to the nation? It splits. It divides. So that's what you need. If you're going to read 1 Kings, you know that there was a king that was called Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam was who? Solomon's son. And then Jeroboam was who? He was the servant. The one that was, the clothes was rent and it was given to him. So the nation was divided. That you had Jeroboam and you had Rehoboam. And the nation divided. You had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. When did that happen? It happened in 1 Kings. 2 Kings, what happens? It still talks about the demise of the two nations, but it also tells you how they ended. That's the purpose. The 1 Kings shows you how they began. 2 Kings shows you how they end and all of that. Now, do you have sister, do you have those copies? Mm-hmm. Did you have my copy, the colored one?
You know what? I think I left it in the coffee.
I want you to go get that one for me, sure, if you would. But I want you to get do you have any of these left? Mm-hmm. Let me have one. Mm-hmm. Now this right here, I looked at giving you some a handout tonight, and really wanted to show you, if they're colored ones, make colors. If it does, just make colored ones out of that colored one there. But when you look at the chart that you've got here, at the beginning, you're going to find out that there is the United Kingdom. The kingdom is united. Look at the first king. The first king is who? Look at it, y'all. Who's looking at it with me? Am I the only one can read it? Who's the first king? Saul. You see it right here? As you're looking at it, it's the second column right here. So who's the first king? Saul. And the kingdom's united. Who's the next king? David. And the kingdom is united. Look at the next one. Who is it? Solomon. And the kingdom's united. Then all of a sudden, look at the big black line. What happens? The kingdom is what? Divided. The kingdom's divided, because what takes place is Jeroboam and Rehoboam. Come on in, everybody. Jeroboam and Rehoboam. See Judah? Can everybody look at the left side of their page where the kingdom's divided? You see Judah? Who's the king? The first king of Judah. You can look at it on. Yeah, look at it on. You don't have it. Who is it? Somebody help me out. I'm not going to go any further until you tell me. Who is it? Rehoboam. And the first king of Israel is who? Jeroboam. So if you look at the column from the right-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4, you see it right there, Jeroboam. And then you start seeing how the Judah on the left-hand side has good kings, evil kings. Good kings, evil kings. Look at the right-hand side, Israel. They're all evil kings when you look down through here. They all wind up in an evil fashion all the way down. Israel never had any good kings at all. I'm looking for the colored, hope she brings me a colored one here. But what I want to do is, now look at both of your kingdoms. Look at it all the way down at the bottom of the page. What does it say at the bottom of the page happened to Judah? They went into Babylonian captivity what year? 586 BC. Now look at the right-hand side. What happens? When did Israel go into captivity? Assyrian captivity. 722 BC. This chart right here, if you're going to study and read the book of Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings, even Chronicles, this right here is what you really need to understand to get a pictorial graph of understanding what the book of Kings is about. It's all about the very last two lines on there. Israel goes into captivity. Judah goes into captivity. And then, of course, after that, you start hearing about Esther. You start hearing about the Nehemiah building the walls back. You say they have left their homeland. They're in another land, and that's what all the Bible's about. But this is where they actually leave at. When? 2 Kings is when it actually takes place. So we're doing all right tonight? So these kind of things will help you read and understand Kings a whole lot better. So look at this here. 2 Kings teaches that the willful sin in a nation has a woeful end. 1st and 2nd Samuel, the nation's born. 1 Kings, it's divided. 2 Kings, what happens? It's called the dispersion. Everybody use the word dispersion. It's the dispersion of the nations. That's the word that you're going to see over and over in theology. Dispersion of the nation. Or the diasporas. You might hear it like that. The diaspora. You'll hear it like that. But this is what they're talking about. After years of pleading with his people through the prophets, God's patience finally turns to discipline, just as he promised. Now, there's a few things in here I want to show you in the book of Kings tonight that as you read it and you look at the thing, the colored one looks, oh, that colored one's better. Mm-hmm. Yeah, y'all look at that.
Okay, thank you.
That's a whole lot better. Everybody happy now? It's like color TV. Isn't it? I mean, I'm going black and white, color. We ain't going back, are we? So you see how at the very beginning of the page again, may I reiterate? At the beginning of the page, you see at the top, the very top black bar is called the United Kingdom. And you look there, you see where King Saul is? King David and King Solomon. The kingdom is united. And then because of Solomon's sin, now remember how we went back? Because of Solomon's sin, God said, I will not take the kingdom from you, Solomon, but I will take it from your children, your son. So now look at what happens here. On the left-hand side, the second column, you see Rehoboam is the son of who? Solomon. Now look in the right-hand side, under the green bar, where in the first green bar, look up where the king is, it's Jeroboam. See what I mean? So what happens is Rehoboam becomes the king only over Judah. Now what does Judah include? Judah includes two tribes. What are they?
Benjamin.
Judah and Benjamin. Judah and Benjamin are considered together. The rest of them, the other 10 tribes, went with Jeroboam. Now Jeroboam was one who fell into idolatry. He was the one who set up idols in Bethel. And he did not want anybody from the northern kingdom to go to Jerusalem to worship the Lord because they would think that they would not return back. So he set up golden calves. Remember that? 2 calves, just like they did when they came off the mountain, when they came out of Egypt. Remember when they came down, that same spirit, they said they made a golden calf. They said, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. Well, right here is Jeroboam sets up 2 calves in the land of Israel so that they would go there and worship the same spirit that was still working there. See what I'm getting at? And then, of course, you see on the left-hand side, well, let's stay on the right side. See the green? You're going to go all the way down to where you see the red line there. It says Israel into Assyrian captivity, 722 BC. And then you're going to see that for some reason, and I'm going to share you this here, for some reason, that God allowed Judah to continue on. But even in that, God was going to bring judgment. It happened all the way at 586 BC. That's where it ended at. So keep that with you. That's a good, there's a lot of different charts. This is the best one I found that would really show you the story of actually what has happened there in the book of Kings. So because both books were originally one, 1st and 2nd Kings, they shared the same theme and the goal. They teach us how unfaithfulness or disobedience to God's laws in rebellion must lead to God's discipline and the overthrow of the monarchy. The 2 kingdoms collapsed because of the failure of the kings to rule righteously and give heed to God's truth. The key word that is in the book of Kings, the key term that describes the content would be dispersion or the captivities. Dispersion or captivities. Now let's look at the key idea. If you was going to look at, now I'm going to give you a copy of this. You'll get a copy of this at the end, won't they?
Yeah.
So look, you'll get a copy of this, so you'll have my notes and all. The key idea of this though is consequent. Now, when I took the classes, they didn't give you the notes. You had to take your notes yourself, and so you had to run that tape back and forth, back and forth. What did he say? What did he say? A key idea, consequences. The division and dispersion of the people of Israel and Judah is a somber reminder that no matter how much God wants to love, heal, and forgive, there comes a time when He will always allow His people to reap the consequences of their choices. Now, let me tell you something else that I just found that really came into my mind. You know, there's a lot of people who says that when we become a child of God, which we all are, and that we're all under the dispensation of grace, right? That there's no law, there is no curse, no curses or anything like that can affect the child of God. So some say. But let me tell you this here. Let me tell you what I really, as the more we do this here, the more God just shows me about things like this here. You know, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, when we do the communion, you know, the communion is for all the children of God. Don't you believe that? It's for all of us, right? We are all the children of God. We can take communion. But let me tell you what one thing that the God of grace and love and all that warns us. He tells us to examine ourselves, to make sure that we do not partake of this unworthily. You see what I'm getting at? Because he said the reason that some of you are sick and die or sleep is because you've partaken of the bread and the cup unworthily. Now, for all those who will say that grace covers it all, and that no matter you can sin and you can do anything, that God doesn't put anything, I'm going, why does he warn us of consequences there in 1 Corinthians 11? See what I mean? He warns us that this will come on you if you partake of this unworthily. Someone said, well, I'm covered under the blood. You know, you can have unforgiveness in your heart. He's trying to warn you against these things. Make sure you're right with him. Make sure your relationship with your brothers and your sisters are right. That makes sense? Yeah. This is the same God in the New Testament is the same God in the Old Testament. Same God. You understand what I mean? And he's warning these people here, live like you're supposed to live. Do what you're supposed to do. I don't care whether you're Old Testament or New Testament. Do what you're supposed to do. And if you do what God tells you to do, there's blessings that comes. If you don't do what he tells you to do, there's consequences for disobedience to God. That makes sense?
Principle of reaping and sowing.
Principle of reaping and sowing. Very good. So, without God's blessings, the people fell prey to the attacks of their much stronger neighbors. It's important to remember that the people's choices and actions, not God's, they reap what they have sown. There you go, brother. That's what they have. So we're going to talk about some of the key chapters that are in here. Let me see how I want to do this here. I've got a lot of different resources that I looked at because I really want to put together a good picture for you. There's a number of chapters key chapters that falls into the category. And we're just going to talk to you about them real quick. Look at here. In chapter 2 is a key chapter because why? Elijah is taken to heaven. He, along with, just as Enoch, they were raptured, taken up. Normal men raptured and taken up. Prior to death, they have never died. Very key because God shows us in principle there that whether you believe in the rapture or not, or you believe that people can be taken up to heaven and changed and even be preserved for thousands of years, this is the picture of it right here. Elijah and Enoch. And many theologians believe that those will be the two prophets that comes back in the end of days, yes, at the beginning of the tribulation, and will be on the earth for 3.5 years, and that they will bring forth preaching and bring forth judgment from Jerusalem for 3.5 years. And then they will die. God will allow the enemies to overtake them. They will die. They will lay in the streets for 3 days. Then all of a sudden their life will return to them. And then what will happen? They're taken up out of there. So many will say that the key chapter here with Elijah is this, is that his taking up into the chariot of whirlwind, it opens up so much more that could happen. See what I mean? Along with Enoch, it happened to him as well. Something happened to these men, and it opens up the possibility of understanding about a real rapture. If you don't believe in the rapture, you have to look at what happened to these two men. Something happened to them, and it goes along with exactly like that. Elijah taken to heaven. Chapter 4 is Elijah's miracle for the widow. And let's do this here while I am looking at that. Let's look at 2 Kings chapter 4. Remember there was something that I said about this Sunday? I think I talked about it Sunday. Look at 2 Kings chapter 4. And it's the widow's miracle. And what we're talking about is she has a child, and this child dies. Now look at it here. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 20. And when he had taken him, he brought him to his mother. He sat on her knees till noon, and then what happened? He died. So we know that this child that Elijah had spoken of, her going to have a child, this child dies. Okay? And then, of course, you know that if you know the story, I'm not here to teach you the whole story, but the story is she goes, finds him. He comes to where the boy is at. And look what happens here in verse 34. And he went up and lay on the child, and he put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child did what? Waxed warm. Now look at what he says here. Then he returned and walked into the house, and and went up to and fro. He walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child did what?
Sneezed.
He sneezed 7 times. See what I'm talking about? And the child opened his eyes. Now, let's just talk about I'm going to say it while I'm teaching on it here in 2 Kings, is that when we do deliverance with people, that there's one of the signs of deliverance is what? Sneezing. I just believe that Elijah rebuked the spirit of death, and what he was praying against was happening, and the spirit of death left what? This boy. Left this house, left this boy, and the sign of deliverance. For those who don't know this here, I mean, you just read, you go, well, I wonder why he was sneezing, and God was doing something. No, we know if you've been anything to do with deliverance, sneezing is one of the signs. And when I saw this here, I'm going, I believe he rebuked that spirit of death. Huh? You know what I mean? That spirit was still on that body.
Premature death.
You know what I mean? Premature death. And when he commanded that spirit, or ever how he did it, that spirit left that body, and then that's the sign. That's the visible sign of a manifestation of a spirit leaving, the sneezing, and I think that's what happened here in that. Can I get somebody? When you say amen, that means you agree. Amen. Amen. So I mean, it's something that we look at. You see what I'm getting at? And then in chapter 4, it's the prayer of the servant and the capture of Assyria. Chapter 17, Israel's fall and the Assyrian captivity in 722 BC. Chapters 18 and 19 is Sennacherib's invasion of Judah and Hezekiah's prayer. Chapters 22 and 23 is Josiah's revival, reforms, and renewal. And then the fall of Judah to Babylon in 586 BC. Let's look at the key verse here for a moment. The key verse is 2 Kings 23, 27. And the Lord said, watch this here now. Here's the key verse and what he said he's going to do. Someone says, this is a key verse.
This is ours.
And what that key verse is what? 2 Kings 23. Now look here. Y'all see your ink pen? When we talk about a key verse out of the whole Bible, you don't mark anything. You need to put something around this verse. Because why? It's the key verse. So when you look at it, 27, I'm marking mine right here. Verse 27. And here's what he says. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed who? Israel. And will cast off this city Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, my name shall be there. That's the key verse. That's all that 2 Kings is about. Is that right there? See, I'm going to cast off Judah. I'm going to get rid of Israel. And I'm going to let the house that I put my name on, I'm going to let it go too. Isn't that crazy? That God put that in the Bible like that? Don't you like studying the Word?
Amen.
So when we look at, that's the key verse. So let's talk about key people. The key people in the book of Elijah. In the book of 2 Kings. You're going to find out the name of Elijah, Elisha, Josiah. Josiah we're going to talk about here in just a moment. Who knows Josiah? Who knows what Josiah did? Who knows how old Josiah was when he came to the throne? What did how old?
7.
How old was and what did Josiah do?
Reigned as king.
He reigned as king, but what did he do? What did he find? He found something. It was very important.
Book of the law.
Book of the law, but who found it?
They give scribe or?
One of the scribes found it. Shaphan the scribe. So you've got to look at this. This story here of 2 Kings, in 2 Kings with Josiah is very important. Naaman, very important. Now, let me tell you what we see here in the book with Naaman. We see Naaman has a leprosy, right? He has a leprosy. He has a friend, he has an understudy by the name of who? Gehazi. Remember Gehazi wanted to get some clothes, get some money, and all the merchandise. He merchandised the gospel and everything. And then the prophet of God said this here. Watch this here now. He says the leprosy that Naaman has is now on you. Remember that? And Gehazi was white, leprous as snow. What happened? What happened there? I mean, let's stay with what we believe. It was a transference of a spirit. Transfer of a spirit went from him, a spirit of leprosy, went from him and went where? Went to Gehazi. To Gehazi. Naaman had it. Naaman had it. He washed. It left him, right? And then he had. Look here. He had the authority to be able to pronounce judgment on what? On Gehazi, and he got the leprosy. Isn't that crazy? That's the same thing what Jesus did in the New Testament, though. When he would cast out demons, he would speak to demons and different things like that. He even allowed the demons to go where? See what I'm talking about? I mean, it's the same God, same Bible, everything. We just don't want to piece it together. First of all, we don't want to believe it. That makes sense? So now and also you're going to talk about King Hezekiah in there. So now let's go ahead and flip through some of these things here. I want you to look at your chart there for a moment. And when you look at your chart, I want you to see what happens here at 722 BC mark on the right-hand side. When you look at the right-hand side, you're going to see on the left-hand side, you're going to see the kingdom of Judah lasted for well over another 100 years there. The kingdom of Judah. And then we have to ask ourselves, why? Why did it last longer than the other one did? Now, first of all, let me tell you what happened here with Assyria. With Assyria coming in. Now, this is going to make a lot of sense to you when you talk about the New Testament. Let me tell you how this fits together with the New Testament. Look on your chart right here, and you're going to see on the right-hand side, you're going to see King Hoshea. King Hoshea. You see him right there? Hoshea is the last king that is in the kingdom of Israel. Now, what happens is that he was able to save Samaria by doing this. He was able to, Assyria is coming in, and he's able to stop Assyria coming into Israel for a period of time by paying tribute. That's what they did. They say, "Hey, don't come in. We'll give you money." Man, that's what I would do too. You do know that the Islam does that to everybody else too. You know that? Is that when they finally take over a nation, that you become vassals, and you come to where if you're going to live under our rule, Islamic rule, you're an infidel, but you're going to pay me. You're going to pay. You pay tax, and that's what happens to. That's still going on over there. Well, see, that's the same thing. That's the same principle that takes place that you see here in the Bible. Here, you see that King Hoshea is paying tribute to the king of Assyria so that Israel can stay formed together. But what happens in 722, he rebels against the king, and what happens is they come on in and they actually destroy all of Samaria. I mean, all of the northern kingdom. But let me tell you what happens here. Is the name of the king is by name of King Sargon.
Well, hello, Henry Schaefer here again as your Bible teacher and the host of the program Old and New Testament Survey. I hope you've enjoyed the program. Now, you can reach me at henry@cwchrist.com. That's henry@cwchrist.com. If you've got any comments or got any questions, look forward to seeing you again. God bless.